to another live here. Hopefully this thing is working correctly. Hopefully it's not sideways on you guys, but welcome back to another live. I'm your host, Josh Kelly. This is week 10 of SwingU Live. So if you've been here the previous weeks, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome to SwingU Lives. We're doing these every single Monday night. And basically what we're doing is live golf instruction, okay? But tonight, we're not really hitting any golf balls. You can see behind me, typically I have this screen, on a range or on a golf course. But tonight, we're just here talking about golf equipment. So I'm glad you guys joined us. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to drop them in the chat. Okay, I don't know why this thing will not turn sideways for me. Let me try something real quick here. Grab this phone like this. Okay, it says it's locked. So what we're going to have to do here is we're going to shoot this one in vertical. We're going to do a little bit of an audible here, guys, so I apologize for that. We're going to shoot this vertical instead of horizontal tonight because that's not quite working. All right, so we're talking about equipment, everything you need to know about equipment. Obviously, equipment is one of the most important things to a golfer. If we don't have the right equipment, the right tools in our hands, it's going to be hard for us to get the job done. So equipment, getting fit correctly, using the right clubs, a lot of golfers don't understand that. They don't have the right equipment and they have things working against them. That's one thing that makes these tour players so good is that they have all these different pieces of equipment available to them, okay? And they have the tour truck that follows them around everywhere. They're able to try different shafts, different heads, different putters, and get the things dialed down for them. So at home, us as amateurs, golfers out there that want to improve, it's so important to have the right equipment in your bag, okay? So tonight, we're going to take you through the equipment that I have in my bag. I just got fit at Callaway. I just signed a staff deal with Callaway a few weeks back. So I actually flew out to Carlsbad, got professionally fit. I learned so much about golf clubs that I never knew. And I still don't know everything, okay? There's a lot of people out there that are way more knowledgeable than me when it comes to equipment. But I do know a good amount. And I think sharing with you guys tonight, talking you through what I know is really going to help you expand your knowledge and hopefully help you understand more about equipment and help you play what's right for you, okay? So stick with us, guys. We're going to talk for 20 to 30 minutes, and then at the end of this, we're going to open it up to a live Q&A. So if you have any questions about your game, about your equipment, what you should be using, please drop them in the comment section below. And then we're going to go back and we're going to look at those questions and we're going to try to answer as many as we possibly can at the end. All right, so we're not going to try to drag this one out too much here tonight, but we're going to just talk you through some of the basics and some things that I think are very important when it comes to equipment. So why don't we start at the top of the bag and work our way down? Why don't we start with the driver, something that everybody wants to know. Everyone wants a new driver. They want to get fit for the driver. They want to hit the ball really a long way. So why don't we start there? Okay, obviously with the driver, one of the most important things is the shaft, okay? And for me, the shaft is almost more important than the head. Maybe not, maybe they're about equal, but for me, I need to make sure that I have a good shaft. And so many people out there, so many golfers are using a shaft that's not right for them. So what we're going to do here is kind of go over a quick rule of thumb that we have here. As far as, where did I put that paper? Oh, here it is. A quick rule of thumb here as far as what you should be, depending on your swing speed, what kind of shaft you should be in. Now, this is going to vary because there's so many different variables. There's weight, there's flex, there's so many different things. There's different lengths, how cutting them shorter or longer can affect the shaft. So before I get started here, I just want to say, and I'm going to say this a lot tonight, that it's so important to go get fit professionally. Okay, go get fit by a master fitter, someone who understands what they're talking about, someone who can look at your game and look at your swing and fit you correctly. For me, I trust like a club champion or something like that, where I know that they have people working there that know what they're talking about. Because like I said, I can give you kind of some rules of thumb that you can kind of go off of, but it's so important if you are going to go buy a new golf club, just get fit, pay the extra a little bit of money, and don't just buy it off the rack, okay? Because it's going to do so many wonders for your game. But if you're somebody who's swinging right now and you're saying, I don't know if I have a shaft that's stiff enough, or maybe I have too stiff a shaft. We have a chart here that we can go off of that can kind of give you a quick rule of thumb. So let's start here. If you have a 75 to 85 miles per hour swing with your club, then you're probably going to need somewhere around a senior flex. Okay. That's going to be considered a really low swing speed. You're only going to be hitting the ball maybe 190, 200 yards. Now, as you get to the 85 to 95 miles per hour swing speed, okay, then you're going to be moving more into a regular flex. Okay, this is more of a swing speed that we see most golfers have, okay, throughout the world. Is anywhere from 85 to 95 miles per hour. So that's going to be more of your regular flex. Now, if you're swinging anywhere from 95 to 110, that's when you're going to start getting into a stiffer flex. Okay, so you're not going to be wanting to swing a regular flex from 95 to 110. Now, obviously, like I said, that can change. There might be people out there that are okay with swinging a regular flex depending on the weight, because you can have a heavier shaft, like just say a 75-gram shaft, as opposed to a 50-gram shaft. Okay, right here, what we have here in this bag, this old Nike, they have it here in the sim room. What we have here in the shaft is a stiff shaft, but it's 50 grams. So it's a really light stiff shaft. What I have in my hand is I have an extra stiff, yes, but this is 70 grams. Okay, so it's going to weigh 20 grams. It's going to be 20 grams heavier than this, obviously. So that will have some effect. That's why I'm not going to say you need to be in a certain flex depending on your swing speed, because that's not true. It can vary, but I'm just trying to give you guys a rule of thumb that you can go off of. If you haven't been fit before, and you know you can get in a simulator and you see your swing speed, then maybe you know it's time for a swing change or a shaft change. Okay, so if we get over 110 miles per hour swing speed, that's when we start moving into an extra stiff shaft. Okay, for me, my swing speed hovers from anywhere from 114, 115 when I'm swinging it pretty normal. I can get up to about 120, and I have the extra stiff shaft. So I have the hazardous smoke here that I've been using for a few years. This is a 6.5. 6.5 for hazardous is basically their extra stiff. 6.0 is going to be their stiff, and then kind of on the way back from there. But again, I got 70 grams is my swing weight. Another important thing to understand is this shaft is actually cut down. Okay, this is 44 and a half inches long. Now, how do they measure how long a driver shaft is? I think this is important to understand. What they do is they take from the center of the club face, okay, back to the end of the grip. All right, so they don't measure from the end of the club back to the end of the grip, but rather they go from the center of the club face where you want to be hitting the ball back to the end of the grip. So this is cut down about an inch. The standard drivers, I know the Callaway standard one that I actually have coming this year is 45 and a half inches, and this is 44 and a half inches. So I'm essentially going to be an inch longer this year than I have this shaft in here. So when I go a little bit shorter, the shaft is going to automatically be stiffer. Okay, the shorter the shaft, obviously, the stiffer you're getting. The longer, the more flex it's going to have. Okay, so you have to understand that if you are cutting down your clubs, or if you are lengthening your clubs, you have to understand that the flexes are going to change. So again, this rule of thumb here, the 75 to 85 senior flex, 85 to 95 miles per hour regular flex, 95 to 110 stiff flex, 110 plus extra stiff, doesn't always equally correctly. It doesn't always work out that way, but it's a great rule of thumb. For instance, my irons this year that I have coming that I got fit for are an inch longer than standard. So I had to go even stiffer with my shaft. If I was cutting them down an inch, if you're someone out there who may be a shorter player, maybe you have maybe even longer arms, not even so much of a shorter player, then maybe you do need something that has less flex. Okay, so that's important to understand. So for me, shaft is huge. Shaft is so big with the driver. So many times people look at the head, which, by the way, Callaway Epic Flash or Epic Speed here is unbelievable. This is a great head. I love this thing, but you have to understand that the shaft is probably just as important, if not more important. So you have to have the correct shaft in your bag. So a couple key points right away that I want to hit. If you haven't already, I really, really encourage you guys to go get fit out there by somebody who knows what they're talking about. Maybe you have a local guy that can come in, a local Callaway rep or a local PXG rep, whatever it may be, whatever clubs you want, or you go somewhere like a Club Champion, somewhere that you can try out a bunch of different golf clubs and see what works best for your game. But I am a Callaway guy, so I do recommend the Callaways, and especially this Epic Speed. But again, go get fit. So we're gonna start there with the driver. The 3-wood, very similar. Okay. The only thing that we see a difference a lot. This is actually my new 3-wood that I got in the mail. So this is a new shaft for me and everything. This is going to be a little heavier shaft. Okay. So I'm 70 grams on my driver shaft, and we're 80 grams in my 3-wood. So the 3-wood shaft is going to be slightly heavier. Okay. Other than that, the stiffness is going to stay about the same. I have an extra stiff in my 3-wood here. And yeah, so essentially the only thing that's really going to be a huge difference from my 3-wood to my driver is we have a little more weight here, 80 grams versus 70 grams. All right, now let's get into the irons a little bit, and we'll expand on things a little bit more. But the irons are very, very important. Okay, this is the Apex Pro. I've been using the Apex for about 5 years now. Okay, I used the 2016 version. This is the 2019 version, and I have the 2021s coming in the mail. Hopefully they'll be here anytime soon, because we're gonna reference that, because I got fit for the first time really professionally. I've been fit before. I went to a place. I'm not gonna name what place this is, but I went in there and nobody knew what they were talking about. When I got fit by the guy, I knew more things than he did. Okay, so it's important to understand to go somewhere that they know what they're talking about. Okay, I'm not going to tell you where I went, but this first time at Callaway that I went, it totally changed my mind on everything. I learned so much. I went so different with my equipment this year. Okay, so with irons, a couple things here. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of different heads. Okay, the head is so important with the iron. Remember, I talked about the driver. The head doesn't matter as much. Now there are different variations of head with the driver. Obviously, there's bigger. There's a bigger footprint, a little bit smaller. There's going to be more forgiving. Maybe some drivers that have less spin. For instance, for me, my Epic Speed. Had about I was just under 3,000 on the spin, which was great. But I went to the Max LS, which is the low spin, and I actually had too little of spin. I forgot to mention that with the driver. One thing is, you have to look at your spin rates when you're getting fit. It's the big thing with the head. Now with the Max LS, the low spin for me, it had too low spin. So someone out there who has too much spin on their driver, maybe a little lower CG head, will give you less spin, just like the Max LS. So that's definitely something that I forgot to mention with the driver that I think is very important. But with the heads of the irons, obviously these are very important too. We talk, obviously you probably heard of the term blade, okay? And most tour players will use a blade versus a cavity back. Okay, this is more of a cavity back here, obviously. It's more of a cavity. But just because it's a cavity back doesn't make it all the same. This Apex Pro is a little more of a player's club, okay? Because it's going to have a little bit of a smaller head. It's going to have a little thinner top line. Okay, here's the top line right here. It's going to be a little less forgiving, but obviously a lot more forgiving other than, like a blade or whatever it may be. The Callaways have a couple different faces. They have what they call a cup face versus a non-cup face. The Apex Pros will have a cup face, which means the ball, it'll be a little more forgiving. It's going to have a lot more pop. Okay, so we typically will see most tour players use a non-cup face head. Okay, so they can control their spin and they can control their distance a little more consistently. This head might not give you as much consistency. Okay, so it's something to think about when you're hitting heads. But of course, when you're getting fit for your irons, you want to understand what type of player you are, what type of ball striker you are. Okay, because if you're somebody who doesn't hit the center of the face very often, you should not be using blades. Okay, I don't know if someone needs to tell you that, but just because you broke 80 for the first time doesn't mean you need to buy a set of blades. All right, so maybe if you're somebody who is a little bit of a better player, maybe you're a single digit handicap. Something more of a player's iron is what they call it. A little smaller head might be for you. If you're somebody who doesn't hit the center of the face a lot, you're a higher handicap. Maybe the typical Apex that has a bigger head, a bigger top line, that you can miss the face a lot more, a little more forgiving, a little more distance. It's good for you. Now, here's the thing that I want to talk about with the irons. It's very important. I don't want you to go get fit and just because you're hitting one iron longer than the other, think automatically, wow, these irons are better for me. They're longer. What I want you to do is make sure you're looking at the lofts, okay? Because club manufacturers have been manipulating the lofts to try to trick people into thinking that their golf club is longer. What do I mean like by that? Well, guess what? A typical, 8-iron loft is now maybe, from 5 years ago, can now be a pitching wedge loft. Okay. So if I have, um, say I have 30, let's just say 30 degrees on a typical 8-iron. Now, if a club manufacturer slaps just the P on the club and makes it 30 degrees, okay, obviously you're going to be hitting it further thinking it's a pitching wedge, but you have to look at the lofts of the club as well. And when we're hitting our irons, hitting them a mile might not be the best thing for us, okay, because if we're hitting our pitching wedge 200 yards, let's just say, that's not great because, our gap wedge, our stand wedge, our lob wedge, you're going to have a huge gap there, okay? So there's a certain distance that you actually start hitting your irons too far. Okay, Tiger talks about this. He always said he had to hit his 5-iron had to be right around the same ridge, right around the same distance when he tried new golf clubs. He didn't want one that went further or shorter. Okay, so that's something to understand. Now, look and feel is so important, and sound, especially with the driver. I forgot to kind of talk about that, but sound is so important. How it looks when you address the club is very important. If you like the way something looks, you're going to have more confidence. If you like the way something sounds when you hit it, you're probably going to like that club a lot better. So there's more that goes into it than just your numbers. Look and feel and sound is also so important. Okay. So that's something to think about when you're getting fit. So, even with your irons, they're going to have different looks. They might have slightly different offsets. They're going to have different top lines. So make sure you're choosing an iron that's more comfortable and it looks better and feels better for you. Now, shafts with irons are very important as well. Right here, I have the Project X 6.5. So similar to what I have in my driver, 6.5 extra stiff. This shaft for me goes really high and I get a lot of spin. For me, I hit the ball too high with too much spin because I play here at Atlantic City Country Club that has a lot of wind. Okay, so this year when I got fit, I asked my master fitter, I'm like, hey, is there any shaft you could put me in that gets me a lower ball flight with less spin? Because for me, that's what I was looking for. And what we did, we went with the C tapers. The C tapers for me, I'm hitting a lot lower, more piercing ball flight. Okay, for anyone watching, if you want to, after this, go check out my Josh Kelly Golf YouTube channel. I did a whole video on the fitting and you can watch that. But yeah, so I went to a C taper that's going to get me a lot more lower piercing ball flight. Okay, so that brings up another great point. Really take your conditions of your golf course into consideration when you are getting fit for golf clubs. We're going to talk about this later on, and it's actually really important when we get down to the wedges. But if you're playing on a course that's always really windy, maybe there's no trees, link style, maybe you're on the bay or the ocean, by the ocean, then finding a golf club that's going to give you a lower, more piercing ball flight is probably best for you. The higher you're hitting the ball in wind, obviously the worse it is. So that's another thing to really consider is your course conditions, because most golfers will play at one golf course most of the time, especially if they're a member somewhere. So definitely take that into account, and we will talk about that further, like I said, as we get into our wedges here. Okay, so shaft is obviously going to be very important as well when we're talking about getting fit. The head, obviously, you need something that's going to work for your game. So always be very honest with your fitter. Tell them what your misses are. Tell them, how good of a golfer you are. Don't lie and say you're a 5 when you're actually a 25. Okay, because they're going to fit you for your swing and what's best for you. And that brings up another point. I know I'm laying a lot of stuff on you guys, but you have to understand and ask yourself, am I getting golf lessons? Am I changing my swing? Okay. If you're going to a golf instructor once a week and you guys are working on a lot of different things, it might not be the best idea to go get fit for clubs without telling him at least. Okay. Because what a fitter will do is he will fit clubs for you that work for your swing. So if you're changing that swing a month later, then what was the point of getting fit for a club for your certain swing? Okay, so a lot of times it's best just to ask your golf instructor, hey, what do you think about me changing equipment or going to this or going to that? And he might say, listen, let's work for a few more months. And then, once we get to where we need to be, then go get fit for clubs, because I say that to a lot of my students out there, and it's so important. Okay, if you're getting fit, if just say for instance I'm really toe down when I'm swinging, okay, and I'm so a fitter for someone who's toe down is going to go more upright on the club, okay, so it's going to help that toe get more in the air. So I'm not going to go get fit for clubs and have my fitter bend it 2 degrees more upright when my golf instructor is teaching me to get my hands a little bit lower to impact and have a more square club. Because once he's teaching me that, and if I have a 2 degrees upright swing, now by the time he fixes my swing, guess what? I'm digging the heel into the ground. Okay. And I'm missing everything, I'm missing everything just way off. Okay. So that brings up another interesting point. When we are bending the clubs, it does something to the club face. Okay. If we go more upright, okay, if we bend this club upright, it's going to cause us to miss more left. If we bend it flatter, okay, this way, it's going to cause the ball to go right. Just like you have a ball above your feet when you're swinging, obviously this is very exaggerated. A more ball above your feet is going to want to go what? Left. More ball below your feet is going to want to go right, just because of this angle, the angle of what the club does. So that's very important to understand. So if you're someone who misses right all the time, maybe take a look at your lie board. If you are toe down, maybe a little more uprighted club is going to help you hit the ball a little bit further left. Okay, so there's a lot of things to consider there. But again, the one major point that I just want to hit on, if you are changing your golf swing, consult with your golf instructor whether or not you should get fit or hold off, or what equipment changes you should actually make. Okay, because that's so, so important. All right, so we talked about the irons there a little bit. If you guys have any questions, we'll answer those at the end. Now let's move to the wedges. Wedges are important, and the one thing I want to talk about first, and we kind of talked about this in our wedge episode, so if you guys have seen that, there might be a little bit of repeating here, but the biggest thing is the bounce and the grind. The wedges are probably the most important to understand and get fit for. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that here. Let's first talk about the gapping, okay, because gapping is so important. We kind of talked about how when you're picking an iron, you want to look at the lofts. So take a look at your lofts, understand and learn them. My pitching wedge loft is bent to 46, okay? It was 45 standard, and now it's 46. Okay, the next club that I go to is going to be a 50, okay? A 50 degrees. So from 46 to 50, obviously I have 4 degrees of difference there, 4 degrees of gapping. I don't want a large gap between my pitching wedge and my gap wedge because I want those distances between clubs to be about the same. From there, I go to a 55-degree wedge. It was 54, but I bent it to 55, so I have 5 degrees of difference there. And then I go to a 60, which is another 5 degrees of difference. So I don't try not to have more than 5 to 6 degrees of difference gapping between your wedges. Okay, figure out whether you're somebody who wants 4 wedges or 3 wedges or so on and so forth. Now with wedges, obviously there's so many different grinds as well. Every golf club manufacturer will have 3 to 4 to 5 different grinds on the wedges. And most of the time, the 60-degree wedge is going to be a lot different. What I like is more of a C grind from a Callaway. Okay, so the leading edge here is more rounded. Okay, for me, that works better. But as we move into the sand wedge and gap wedge, I like more of an S grind that has more of a straighter leading edge. Okay, this is a club that I'm not really opening up as much. A club that has more of a rounded leading edge. When I'm opening it up, it helps me a lot more. So understanding, taking a look at the different grinds on the wedges, very important. So the 3 biggest things when you're picking wedges is gapping, grinds, and bounce. Bounce we talked about a bunch, but hey, if you guys weren't here last episode, let's talk about it for a second. What is bounce on the club? Obviously, this is going to be the loft running this way. The bounce runs this way, okay? The bounce is this little piece right here in the back of the club that lets the club bounce off the ground. Now, when you have firmer conditions, you want a wedge that has a little less bounce. Softer, longer, wetter conditions, you want more bounce. Okay, so figure out the golf club that you're playing at most of the time and figure out what you want to do. I have this lie board here because I just wanted to kind of rest this on here and kind of show you as I rest this lie board or this club on the lie board, you're going to see that the leading edge, okay, is actually off the ground, okay, because we have 10 degrees of bounce here. Actually, I bent this 54 to 55, so it actually added bounce a little bit, okay? And we talked about the more loft we put on the club, the more bounce we have, so the more the leading edge is off the club. So you got to understand, again, if you're playing in softer conditions, you want more bounce. This has a 10. My 60 has an 8, okay? And for most amateur golfs out there, bounce is your friend. So the more bounce you can have on your wedge, the better. Okay, so make sure your gapping's correct. Make sure you're looking at your conditions. Make sure you have the right grind that looks best for you and the correct amount of bounce. So important when you are choosing wedges. So wedges to me are one of the most important things to understand and change. And I feel like for me, I don't need a professional fitter to tell me what wedge I need. Okay, so I can kind of look at it myself and figure out the feel and how it looks and what my conditions are. So if you understand and get your knowledge up with that, you're going to be able to select your wedges a lot easier. Now, as we go up in the bag, the irons, fairway woods, and driver, to me, it's more important to get fit for those clubs. Okay. So lastly, let's talk about the putter here. Putter's super important, and we kind of talked about this during our putter lesson. I think that was week 4 or something like that. But obviously, there's so many different putters out there. Okay, there's mallets. There's more of a blade style. We kind of talked about toe hang. Okay, how the toe hangs here as I rest this club here and don't touch it. It naturally will. The toe will naturally hang towards the ground. What kind of stroke would be good for a toe hang putter? More of an arc stroke, because that toe, because the weight is mostly out here, it's going to want to open up in the backswing and close on the follow through. So more of an arc stroke would be better for that. A face balance. So if I had a putter that I let go and the face balanced like this, the face pointed at the sky, would be better for a more straight back and straightforward stroke. Obviously, another thing is length. Okay, I got a 36-inch putter. Obviously, if you're a shorter person or whatever it may be, you may need a different length. So putter's super important. Obviously, I try not to tinker too much with it. I wasn't putting great a few months ago, and the one thing I did change was I changed from the grip. I had a big super stroke on here, and I went to a little more of a slim traditional pistol grip here, a ping grip, and that really helped me out a lot. So if you're someone who is struggling with putter, sometimes a simple grip change can really help you and go a long way. But obviously, another super important thing to get fit for, and it's all going to come down to feel and how it looks. Putter is so important for you guys out there, and it's not always the most expensive putter is the best putter for you, obviously. So don't get caught up on the price tag or anything like that, or how people are going to feel about it. If you like a putter, I don't care if it's 30 years old, it's ugly. If you make putts with it, that's all that matters. Okay. So that was a great little overview there. The one thing that I want to kind of talk about that's really important to me that I really learned a lot about at Callaway was arm length, arm hang, how tall you are, and what size clubs you need. Obviously, this is going to change, but for me, I'm 6'5". Okay, a lot of people are surprised when they meet me on how tall I am. Okay, my arms don't really hang down really far. Growing up, I never really got fit. I grew about a foot from my 8th and ninth grade year. So I had standard clubs and I just kind of worked my swing around it. Okay. Looking back, yes, it probably would have really helped my golf game when I grew that foot to get fit for different clubs, but it didn't happen. And I kind of worked my swing around it. But this year, I'm trying to change that. So when I got fit at Callaway, what he did was one test was the arm hang, the wrist to floor. So he measured how far my wrists were to the floor. And for me, I was about 37 to 38, which is really high. He was telling me about 35 to 36 was more of a standard length. So if you're standing there and you have someone measure from your wrist down to the floor and you're around 35, 36, then you're going to be more of a standard length club. Because I can be a really tall guy, but if I have really long arms, I might not need longer clubs. I have a buddy who is just about as tall as me. He did get struck by lightning as a kid, and he claims when he got struck by lightning, it made his arms grow because he has abnormally long arms. And he's just as tall as I am. And guess what? He got fit and he plays half an inch shorter than standard. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if you're a tall guy, you need longer clubs. Oh, you're a short guy, you need shorter clubs. That's not necessarily the truth. It really just depends on your wrist to floor. Okay, and obviously everyone's going to be a little bit different. You're going to have different postures, different stance, and things like that. But that's one thing to consider is how far your wrist hangs from the floor, how long your arms are, how tall of a golfer you are, how short you are. So let's go over some main points that I have tonight. Number one, get fit by a professional who knows what they're doing. For me, try to find your local Callaway rep or go to a Club Champion. I'm not sponsored by Club Champion, but I really do believe that they have a good product there and they have people that know what they're talking about. Okay, find somebody in the area who knows what they're talking about when it comes to fitting for clubs because it's so important. Number two, take into account the conditions you're playing at. If you're a member at a course and you're playing there almost every day, if it's windy, try to fit your clubs for a windier conditions. If it's more firm or more soft, try to fit your wedges around it. You're more firm, you want less bounce. Softer, longer rough, you want more bounce. Okay, if you have firm sand, less bounce. Soft sand, more bounce. So on and so forth. So fit yourself around your conditions. Number three, talk to your golf instructor. If you are getting lessons, okay, if you're taking golf instruction lessons weekly and you're changing things about your swing, it's probably not the best idea to go get fit. But also talk to him. Maybe he does want you to get fit and then work your clubs around your swing other than changing some swing mechanics. Okay. And really the last thing that I want to talk about is uh, the importance of the irons, the fairway woods, and the driver. Okay, the wedges to me, if you start learning enough, you can get out there and feel it and figure out the wedge that works best for you. Sitting in a fitting room might not be best for your wedges because you're just hitting balls. It might be best to try to get out there with different wedges around your practice green or whatever it may be and see what feels the best. So from the wedges, the irons, the driver, the fairway woods, the more important it is to get fit. Wedges, not so much. Putter, obviously very important to get fit for as well. But if something's working for you, if you like it, if you have that confidence, don't fix it just because you have a bad day. Putting doesn't mean you need a brand new putter. Like I mentioned, I made a grip change and it really helped me out a lot. Okay. So again, guys, if you haven't already, go get fit. We're going to kind of open this up to a Q&A right now. So if you have any questions, drop them below and I'm going to do my best to answer them. I think this is a pretty good little chat about golf equipment tonight. Again, I know a decent amount about golf equipment, but I don't know as much as the experts. So that's why it's so important to get out there and talk to somebody who does this professionally. Like I said, if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section right now. We're going to take a look here, see if we have any questions. This is not the best thing as far as we always have an issue with this every week. Jim said he's a first-time watcher. Thanks for joining us, Jim. See, this chat disappears all the time. Okay. Let's see if we have any questions. How do you know when you need new grips? Okay, that's a good question. For me, I change my grips twice a year because I play a lot. I'm playing 3 to 4 times a week, so twice a year. Obviously, if your grips start to tear, I mean, yes. So I don't know if you're talking about the putter, but grips in general. For me, the reason why I changed the putter grip is I had a bigger Super Stroke grip on there, and I was losing the feel. Okay, I just didn't like all the hype was around it when Jordan Spieth was winning 3 years ago. And listen, Super Stroke grips are great for a lot of people, and so many guys on tour are still using them. Everyone's different. But for me, I just didn't have the feel as much. So I wanted to go back to a smaller pistol grip, and for me, that worked. But if you're talking about grips as far as wearing out, yeah, that's something to talk about. I would say get your grips changed at least once a year. I do it twice a year because I play 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, and another thing is I want to talk about my grips that I use. I actually use the Golf Pride Align grip here, and for me, I like the way that feels in my fingers there when I'm taking the club, and it just makes sure that my hands are in the correct position each time. So I hope that answered your question. Let's see if we have another question here. Okay. Someone asked to talk about the difference between graphite and steel shafts with their irons. He said he's losing distance with steel. Obviously, it kind of just goes, back into, back in the day, Tiger used to use a steel shaft on his driver, and now he's using more of a graphite shaft. Yeah. So obviously, again, it's all about getting fit and feeling the difference. A graphite shaft's going to be a little softer. Okay. One of the things it's going to do is it's not going to be as impactful for your joints and your arms. That's another reason why most older golfers will play them. Another reason is graphite's going to be lighter. Obviously, the heavier the shaft, the harder it is to swing. Okay, the slower you're going to swing it. The lighter the shaft, the faster you can swing it. You ever have a alignment rod? You know how fast you can swing an alignment rod because it's light and it's whippy. Okay, so yeah, if you're an older golfer, you want to take less stress off your bones, and don't be afraid if even if you're a younger golfer, if a graphite shaft works for you, I know a lot of people can catch some heat for that, but if it works for you, then play it. Okay, yeah, it's going to help you swing it a little bit faster. It's going to provide a little more whip, and it's going to be a lot softer. Okay, it's not going to hurt the joints as much. So that's a great question there concerning whether you should go steel or graphite shaft because the graphite shaft in irons have become better and better. So I think you're going to see more and more of that as the years progress and as technology progresses. You're going to see a lot more graphite shafts in clubs. So that's a great question. And listen, if you get fit for them correctly, don't be afraid to use a graphite shaft. See if we have any more questions here. Any more questions? Go ahead and drop them below. Not seeing too many questions come in here right now, guys. If I'm gonna pretty much wrap this up tonight. Again, my name is Josh Kelly. We're doing these every Monday night. If you want to go check out my YouTube channel, Josh Kelly Golf, you can watch my full fitting at Callaway there. I think there's going to be a lot to learn there as well. And make sure you're joining us every Monday night. SwingU, this is another premium feature that SwingU provides. We're trying to make you guys the best golfers we possibly can. Okay, yeah. Someone talked about balls. I didn't really cover golf balls tonight, and we'll cover that another night. I apologize for that, but so we're not going to really cover golf balls tonight. We're just talking about golf clubs. Um, but yeah, we will talk about golf balls in the future. But yeah, so like I was saying, Swing U is just giving you guys as many things as we possibly can to make you guys the best golfers we can and help you have the most fun out in the golf course. So if you guys have any more questions, you can leave them in the YouTube section, and I'll try to go back and answer them for those of you guys that aren't watching live. And listen, we're having so much fun. We're hanging out here every Monday night. We're talking about the golf game. The other weeks was more golf instruction. We hit balls. We talked about how to fix a slice, how to fix a hook, or how to hit your driver better, things like that, like the normal stuff. But tonight, I thought it'd be fun just to kind of take a break and talk about equipment here for a second. So I'll see you guys all next Monday night. Really enjoyed it, guys. And again, my name is Josh Kelly. And again, thank you so much. Us here at SwingU are so grateful for your support as premium subscribers. We're so glad to have you. And the golf season is upon us. We're all excited and we're all pumped. So everyone have a great week out there, and we'll see you next Monday.